He pulls a ZX81, you pull an Amiga. He sends one of yours to a demo party, you send one of his to Vintage Computer Festival. That's the Chicago way. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Checkmate checks out. The end of a second era.
Teletext Admiration Society, in which I acknowledge American tech inferiority on an issue.
Holy clickbait, Batman. Or is it? Some madman has asked if the Amiga Batman pack was overrated.
And racing game updates, along with a smegging disappointment coming up on this week's show for the week of Saturday, the 13th of June, 2026.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
So it is a demographic fact that any American man born in the 1970s is probably named Jason. And then the film Friday the 13th comes out, and then only really freaky moms wanted to name their sons Jason. So I'm Jason. Dave's back. His heart's still fine. Chris is here as well. But we have bonus Jason, Jason Timmons from Chicago Classic Computing and Vintage Computer Festival Midwest. So Jason Timmons, welcome to This Week in Retro.
Thank you, Jason, for the welcome. And you are right. The peak Jason was 1980. I looked that up just last night.
Yep, because then the freaky moms figure it out, and yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you guys have that effect? Like, was everybody named Jason in your classes, or just us?
There's a few Jasons, but not that many. Chris and Dave and Neil, Matthew are really, really common. I mean, I'm common as muck. That name there, and then now they go through cycles where people seem to pick a name that they think is unique and interesting, and then 2 years later, everyone's called it.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't realize how common Chris was until literally the last decade, I guess, and suddenly they're all coming out of the woodwork. I'm like, I thought I was the only one. Everybody else is the anti-Chris. But anyway.
Welcome to the show, Jason. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was hoping to just talk a little bit about how you, I don't know, do we call it accidental? Do we call it intentional? Because you basically now run one of the world's largest retro events ever, and I don't know, it's just sort of happened?
The largest, Jason.
All right, so
as far as we know, there could be a secret one in Asia somewhere we haven't uncovered. Yeah, it's very accidental. You know, it was. We didn't plan this. We didn't cultivate this. We at best we guided it. We gave it a forum, and you were there in the beginning. I don't know if we were getting into the whole story, the whole history just yet, but. You were there, and I joined your thing, really. And then it grew, and it grew, and it grew. And now we're in our 21st year of the VCF Midwest, Vintage Computer Festival Midwest. And we have them all over the country. We have them in there's a new one in Australia coming up, Montreal. Where's the UK in this? I think there's a London one forming.
Yes.
I know that there's a few events in the UK. There's Kickstart 3 this year. There was Retrofest that I had hoped to go to. I didn't. Do we have a VCF?
You don't have to call it a VCF. It's okay.
Yeah, Vintage Computer Festival GB is in September.
I thought I had. Oh my goodness! I hope it's not on our weekend. If it is, we're going to set up a link. There's Munich, there was Berlin, there was Rome, somewhere in Switzerland was doing it. And this year added Argentina. So welcome Latin America.
So do we possibly need to ask what, none of us here need to ask, but what is VCF?
VCF, the Vintage Computer Festival, is a loose coalition of people into retro computing, technology, but also retro technology in general. We've expanded into telephones or telephony, we like to call it, radios, ham radio. You know, everyone in this hobby probably has a dozen other hobbies, so they all bleed over. But primarily, it's people who collect and explore and even use computers from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and since there's young folks getting into the hobby, we'll say the 2000s too. But my personal background, I was a Commodore kid, so it's all about the 80s to me, and Unix workstations and all of the things either common people couldn't have or your mother couldn't buy you when you were a kid. And now it's time to collect all of them.
Yeah. Now we've got a little bit of disposable income. and they are on eBay cheap. We fill our houses with them. Yes,
Cheap.
I think we've all done that. Yeah, well,
formerly cheap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the event essentially grew out of one sort of abandoned expo merging into another sort of abandoned expo. There had been a smallish, mostly Commodore themed retro event that looked like it was about to end, and this was about 20 years ago or so. And I said, well, I like an excuse to hang out with my friends and do Commodore stuff every year, so we'll just pay for the room and we'll keep that going. And we did that once or twice. And then Jason said, hey, there used to be a vintage computer festival Midwest that got abandoned. What if we just take this other room that you guys aren't using and start doing vintage computer festival Midwest?
I came along and spoiled the whole thing.
Yeah, no.
It's not just hanging out with your friends anymore. No.
And I said, sure.
No, it's a job.
Because mine, like I figured, we're on a glide path down to zero. We'll just kind of land this plane nice and controlled. And then in came Jason Timmons and the group that went on to form Chicago Classic Computing. And they took, what was the side room at this and have now turned it into, apparently the largest retro event that there is, just by kind of saying, what if we keep putting up a bigger room and letting people bring in mainframes? And that keeps happening.
Let's just let it grow and see what happens. And, I see it as we're riding a wave. We didn't intend for this to happen, but we gave it a forum. We gave it a venue. You're right. It was about 20 years ago. I believe 2006, a man named Pat Finnegan, who will come into the story later, was running VCF Midwest at Purdue University, which is in Indiana. I see another cat there. And he ran it much like Jason was running the Commodore show. It was in probably a free room at the university that they let him use. And it's very small. It's what I call, including our first few years, the just us era, because it was just us. You knew everyone at the show. Almost everyone attending was most likely behind a table doing a display, and it was friends hanging out. And loadout was less than an hour, and everyone would go for pizza, and that was it. So Pat did that for 4 years and got sick of it. I hope I'm not speaking for him incorrectly, but I think he got tired of it and took a year off. That was 2009. By that time, I was already attending Jason's show, and I think I had even attended one or two of the ones before your Commodore show, when it was the other Commodore show, which I think you were involved with anyway, but it had a different name. So I was starting to discover this thing called computer collecting, or I don't think anyone called it retro computing then. And,
hoarding, problematic hoarding.
Yes, yes. And Jason and I actually knew each other many years previous to that, and we didn't know we knew each other. But so we got in contact, and I said, let's bring this VCF thing up here. And as Jason said, we used a spare room, and 800 square feet, maybe. I don't remember. And we threw some computers that were not Commodores in that room. That's about it. And we did that for another 2 or 3 years. And then we said, this thing's growing. Let's go to a Holiday Inn, and then another venue and another venue. And now we're, last year was 66,000 square feet, and there are rumors about growth this year. I'll leave it at that.
Amazing. The other thing it needs to define is what is the Midwest, and I understand it to be anything that isn't California, Las Vegas, Texas, the South, or the East Coast. Is that about right? It's everything else.
The Great Lakes region, the plains, it's fuzzy. I'm sure there's a Wikipedia map out there that'll define the Midwest. When I joined a Discord server some years ago, I think he was a Californian, tell me that I was not in the Midwest. That simply, Illinois simply can't be the Midwest. It's the Great Lakes. It's something else. Midwest is Kansas and the farms, the wheat fields. But yes, Illinois, maybe you wouldn't include Chicago, but is very much the Midwest. We grow a lot of corn here.
And cheese. Jason, don't you?
Cheese is just to the north of us.
You get into your Wisconsin versus Illinois violence, and that's a different podcast.
Peace and cheese. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, anyway, shall we get into it?
Yeah, I hear it's the end of days for Amiga again.
Back in the 80s or 90s, you might have owned a Commodore Amiga. These were initially a desktop case with a separate keyboard, but the vast majority of them were in that familiar wedge shape. Commodore split the line in 1987 to the Amiga 500 in the wedge and the Amiga 2000 in the desktop case. They were still fundamentally the same thing inside. The main difference, obviously apart from the boxes, was that the 2000 was built with expansion in mind. It had 4 ISA slots and was designed to take a PC bridge board, allowing the Amiga to do double duty. It also had a CPU upgrade slot, and it had 5 Zorro 2 slots, the Amiga-specific expansion slots for memory, SCSI controllers, etc. The Amiga 500 lacked the hardware to have multiple Zorro slots, but you could get away with a single one, more or less, through a sidecar expansion. And there were clever products like the GVP series where they combine more than one expansion into a single slot expansion, giving you most of broadly what most people wanted in an Amiga 2000, kind of. Yeah, not always. I mean, if you wanted the full fat Amiga 2000, you needed the full fat Amiga 2000. But prosumers wanted that. But I should also mention that Amiga 2000 came with more memory than the Amiga 500 as well. But for the most part, it was the same guts inside the wedge. It was the same chipset. It was the same processor, etc. But the price difference was huge. On launch, the Amiga 500 was $700 and the Amiga 2000 was $2,400, so 3.5 times as much. And that's where Checkmate came in. In 1989, Stephen Jones and James Campbell released the Checkmate 1500, or Checkmate 1500 if we're doing it that way. It was an upgrade kit for the 500 that meant voiding a warranty, taking it all out and putting it into this case, but it took it most of the way to being a 2000. The reality, if you hadn't already guessed, that was Commodore were charging a massive premium for the 2000 over the 500, and it wasn't worth it for many people. And getting the upgrade kit saved a fortune. And Commodore UK realised this, and they famously had a meeting with Checkmate about, supposedly, Checkmate thought they were going in to do some business with Commodore, and then Commodore decided, no, we'll actually squash you. And despite not being sanctioned by main Commodore, they released the Commodore Amiga 1500 themselves in order to make the Checkmate 1500 redundant. And they used an A1200 board, so meaning it really was a 2000 in there. And the net result for Commodore, all things considered, was that they lost most of the price premium on the 2000 by cannibalizing their 2000 sales with the 1500. Sales of the 2000 flatlined, and because they wanted to stamp out the Checkmate, they ended up stamping out a lot of their own 2000 sales. Now, this is in the UK only. This is a UK-specific thing. The Commodore globally did not release the 1500. It was Commodore UK deciding to do this. The price of the 1500 was low enough that prosumers did buy. In other words, enthusiasts or small businesses who didn't want to do a PC bridge board, who didn't want all the expansion slots, they were better off with a 1500. And they bought it in relatively large numbers because you could buy that, then put in third-party upgrades and have a better and cheaper 2000, more or less. And it turns out that if you peeled off the sticker on an Amiga 1500, what was underneath it? An Amiga 2000 badge, because the Commodore 2000 was not made in the UK, so Commodore UK had to buy in a 2000, put a second floppy in, and rebadge it to get the 1500.
That's hilarious. So was it a 2000 board in it? Sorry, Dave, because I think you said 1200 board. Okay, it was a 2000 board. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't mean a 1200 board because the 1200 wasn't even invented then. So
yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, too easy.
2000 board. So it's a very shortened version of a fascinating story. I'll put some links in the show notes so you can read more about it because it really is interesting. But it brings us to another point in history, not as old as 1989, but back in 2018, Stephen Jones came back. Hello, Kat. Hello, Nacho. Stephen Jones came back with the Checkmate Plus. The idea was a Kickstarter to make a very premium Amiga case that was suited for lots of things, but of course, it was suited for putting a 500 or a 1200 into that classic case in the Checkmate style. It was a success. He sold over 1,000 of these heavy metal cases between the original and the mini one. And the mini one is actually very clever. On its own, if it was sitting not around other computers, you wouldn't notice it was mini. The dimensions are smaller, but not small enough that it doesn't strike you as being small. So if you put a flat screen monitor on top, it looks just right. But these things, of course, are made in batches in order to be financially viable. And there's a lot of effort goes into managing the sales and logistics and all the rest of it. And Stephen is now drawing it to a close. He has a few left to sell, and I'm sure they'll be sold by the time you hear this. So Checkmate is coming to an end. I have one. It looks fantastic. Mine is my ideal Amiga. It's a black Checkmate with a black Checkmate keyboard shell. I've got black A1200.net keycaps. I've got my Amiga 1200 in there, an 060, a Solus, a flicker fixer, and base MX, and a matching gateway black CRT. Producer Duncan has his too. He did his years ago, his Checkmate. But it is the end for Checkmate. What do you reckon, Chris?
I think it's sad, but it's understandable because it's a niche product, right? And you can't keep selling the same thing to the same people. I don't have one, and hearing you talk about yours, Dave, does make me jealous. And also the fact that you can fit a PC board inside these cases. It's got the mounts for different things and the back plates and everything. And I do remember watching some of his earlier videos about the Kickstarter and thinking, throw a PC in that and then just set it up as my daily driver, but also specifically for emulation. That would be a great rig. That would be fantastic. But I never went and did it. But yeah, I mean, I'd have one of those for sure, even if it was just to do that. I just love Steve's origin story as well. And you've covered it well there, Dave. And again, it's been one of those things that it's only over the past few years. So let's say the last, since 2019 into 2020, that I learned that story. And it's a fascinating story of how they thought, like you said, they were going to do business with Commodore. And then Commodore went, don't think so. We're just going to completely, pull the rug from under you. Bit of a shame, because that's the one where they turned up to the meeting in a Porsche. Is that right as well?
I'm not sure if I remember that or not. I don't know.
I think his mate had a Porsche or so. If I'm getting it right, he can jump in the comments and correct us. Yeah, just to try and make an impact for their meeting at Commodore, they went in this Porsche. Anyway, but yeah, I do think maybe they should speak to current day Commodore, because maybe they should get in touch, because a future Commodore branded Amiga in one of these cases, that would be awesome, or something similar to this case. And Steve's already put in all the hard work, so it'd be a shame to see it go to waste.
I'll testify as an American. I did not know the Checkmate story. I was familiar with the 1500 as a UK only model, but I had no idea of that the Checkmate background or the drama that occurred there. The current Checkmate, is it an FPGA reimplementation of the Amiga, like we've seen with the Mini and others like that? The
Checkmate is just a shell. It's just a desktop case.
Oh, you put your Amiga board in it. Okay.
Yeah, so you can put a 500 or a 1200, or in fact an ITX board. You could even put a Mister in there. Lots of people have put lots of different things in there. You can even stick a Pi in there if you want to. But it looks like an Amiga 2000 that's styled after that.
Cool. I had a 500 as a kid. As a fresh high school graduate, my father gave me the option. You can have this Amiga thing you won't stop talking about. I was a C64 kid, of course. Or you can have a car. And any normal 18-year-old male would have chosen the car. But of course, I got an Amiga 500 for high school graduation. I got a car later. It was okay. And I took the Amiga to college, and the 500 had its limitations, and I did eventually get, you mentioned before, the GBP sidecar. It was the fancy 030, and it had a hard drive in it, a 40 meg hard drive, which I noted later when I opened it up was recycled from a Mac. It still had the Apple sticker on the hard drive, so they were probably pulling them out of Mac SEs or whatever. Had 40 megs back then. And it was technically my first PC because I had the 286 bridge board in it, which was a tiny little card that fit in the sidecar, and I didn't have a clue what to do with it. DOS, what's that? I don't know. It's nothing compared to the Amiga back then, and the 286 was limited anyway. But technically, that was the first PC I ever owned. what this reminded me of, and I was reading the show notes last night, and I researched the Checkmate real quick, and I think Jason is probably the only other person I've met that knows what this thing is. There's a product, and I searched my basement for it. I'm sorry I couldn't find it. It's unbelievable I couldn't find it because it's the most awkwardly shaped computer object I have. It was called the Bodega Bay, and it was a wedge-shaped thing with a terrible peninsula coming out of it, which hooked into the side of the 500. So you'd hook your 500 into it, and it became 2000 like, but about 2.5 feet deep when it was all together. Very, very awkward on any desk. And I've got one. I got it off Craigslist, 15 years ago or something. And I posted it, I think, on Facebook, and Jason commented on it because he's the only person who knew what it was.
Yeah,
and I've
no,
never
that
seen
was
one
that
since.
was one of the things in the 10X catalog, which was
10X, yep.
mostly Commodore themed mail order house. Based
I just recently found the Commodore 10X catalog, by the way.
Yeah. No, that and we'd always flip by it and go like, that'd be amazing. Think of all the things you could do. Yeah. So for people who know the Checkmate but don't know the Bodega Bay, rather than the Checkmate approach of housing the entire motherboard in it, you'd have the sidecar attachment, and that would lead out. So you still had the 500 under this awkward case thing, rather than relocating it.
And it reminded me of, I think it was called the VIC 1001, the VIC 20 expansion bay. That was an actual Commodore product. And lengthened your VIC to take the entire desk. And I think you could put a monitor on it. But
that's ringing
the Bodega,
bells.
I don't know. And I'm guessing that was a U.S. only product and probably sold in the solid 2 digits anyway. So
yeah,
I got one. It escaped and got to me through Craigslist somehow.
Yeah,
that's you mentioned hoarding before. Yes, that's exactly what it is. I see strange things. I acquire strange things. They go downstairs. I talk about them on podcasts 20 years later.
I absolutely love these Frankenstein monster expansion things for computers. They're absolutely fantastic.
So can I do a little comparison before we move on? Yeah. So I've had a really tough time finding just what the Checkmate expansion board does. There's like 80,000 images of here's a 500 motherboard inside. I can't find it. Bodega Bay would expand. You'd get 4 Zorro slots, and 3 of those had the PC bridge capability in them. So that was what you got out of that. I can't find exactly how many Zorro and bridged ISA slots you got on Checkmate. Dave, I know you mentioned. Okay, go ahead.
You didn't get any. They didn't really finish that part of it. They were cutting GBP boards in half to get them to fit inside. You didn't get any ISA inside there. They would have had to have made an expansion to do that. So it really what you got with a Checkmate, I think, according to my friend Pillock, who I've been asking information on. Pillock is very knowledgeable on Amiga stuff. Basically, Commodore killed it dead, and had Commodore not killed it dead, they would have had this infrastructure. They would have built up this infrastructure, but because they didn't get there. And what you ultimately had with a Checkmate case was 2 disk drives, and you space for a hard disk in there, and you could maybe do something with the turned around expansion bracket of the 500 in there. But they never got to the heights they might have done had Commodore not stabbed them in the back.
And did he never get to it when he came back 30 years later either?
So 30 years later wasn't about turning an Amiga 500 into a 2000. It was just about having a really nice big box Amiga on your desk.
It looks to me like the current case is Amiga 3000 styled. I think you said it was 2000 styled, Dave. This looks like a 3000.
I will defer to Amiga expert here.
I had never been curious enough to look up the whole why does the UK have a thing called the Amiga 1500, or I just never heard that story. That is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Why would you not just have a machine that's called the Amiga 2000 worldwide? I don't care if there's some rinky-dink third-party vendor that's setting up something called the 1500. That's really typical Commodore.
It is tin pot Commodore UK stuff.
Yeah.
And they ended up selling it for much less than the Amiga 2000. But they were taking Amiga 2000, selling it for much less than Amiga 2000, putting an extra floppy drive in, putting a sticker on the label, and then saying, this isn't an Amiga 2000, we don't need to compensate our suppliers and all the rest of it. just to screw these guys over. Amazing.
I was happy to hear that they modeled after the 3000. That was prime Amiga to me. That was the pinnacle. The 4000 would have been if it didn't have the problems the 4000 had. But the 3000 was the coolest, and you know why? Because it had a VGA output, and I was embarrassed as PCs and Macs got more popular that my Amiga flickered and gave people seizures and melted brains. VGA output. Okay, they finally worked that out. But you don't hear stories like this anymore. I'm sure we will, or the stories break as they're happening on Twitter or something. You don't hear stories about they were using somebody else's product cut up in order to ship their own product, And I'm reminded of someone will correct me. I think it was Microscience. It was a hard drive manufacturer that was on its way out, and they were in the final days just shipping bricks, just literal bricks, to vendors. And they'd get a box of bricks, and that's it. And they'd say, "Okay, you've paid your invoice. See you later." And then the company folded. It may not have been Microscience. It was one of the small time players.
Yes, for legal reasons.
Surely it was not.
We are unsure who the vendor was.
Well, they're gone. They're gone. They can't sue.
Yeah. Maybe a company with that name now, though. But yeah, before you move on, Dave, just to clarify, like who was interested in what when you say it was most of the way to an Amiga 2000, right? The Checkmate, apparently did added those Zorro slots, but you didn't get the processor slot, which was important to having full CPU upgrades. You didn't get a video slot, so that's your video toaster. That's some of your frame buffer type things. You didn't get those bridge slots, so that's a lot of it. That's a good amount of expansion, but it's not the same as you just plunk this thing in here and now you've got an A2000.
Yeah, I think it went into the middle ground that didn't exist between. If you look at the two different pricings, you had the 500, which was really amazing value for what you got, and you had the 2000, which was quite a lot more expensive. This was the middle kind of prosumer one, the kind of small office type thing. So I think that would be kind of where this would fall. And did Commodore miss a trick by not having a middle ground Amiga? I don't know.
Somebody show me an office that ran on an Amiga. I want to see it. I want to see proof.
Unless it was in TV production or an episode of Neighbours. I don't know that you'd find one.
Game making, I don't know. But when one door closes, another opens. New Commodore have announced that there's going to be an announcement. So that's typical periphractic style. There's going to be an announcement. I think on the 14th or is it 16th, there's going to be an announcement very soon, and they've been talking up what they're going to bring to the world for the last year. So assuming it is this, then we don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be something for the future. It's going to change the world. But it might be something else, because there's a photo being released by Perifractic of him meeting Mike Battista in Italy. Now that is Mike from Cloanta and Amiga. It has been speculated that Commodore, speculated by me, that Battilana. There we go. What's Batista? Where am I getting Batista for?
Some other guy.
Some other guy.
He's in some Marvel movies. Batista is.
He was an Atari guy. Don't worry about
it. It's been speculated by me and by other people that new Commodore will release an Amiga in the same way they've done with the C64 Ultimate. All the parts already exist. There's a very mature FPGA core called the Minimig. There's even been projects like the Unamiga that put the FPGA into a port-compatible board to put it into an Amiga case, even a Checkmate. A1200.net are just finishing off the replacement mechanical keyboard. They've done cases and keycaps too. So there's nothing stopping Commodore other than getting the rights to it and making it financially viable to make an FPGA ready to go in a box Amiga. And the main people to get those rights from is Mike from Cloanto. Now, they already own the rights to use the C64 ROMs, because they've bought that from Mike to use in the C64U. So there's a working relationship there. And I predict, I'm going to go out and say there is an Amiga coming in FPGA form from Commodore. I'm sure it's going to happen. But it hasn't been confirmed yet. I'm guessing an Amiga 1200. What do you guys think?
I think I'm going to be in trouble with Nikki if they do pull this off, because even again today she said, when does it stop, Chris? When does the collecting stop? And I'm going to say it, if Commodore come out with an FPGA Amiga, whether that be 600 case or a 1200 case or whatever, I'm going to buy it. because I think that would be a fantastic. And I think that's probably, dare I say it, that's potentially the last Amiga we may get, realistically, because that would be the pinnacle. A Commodore branded FPGA recreation Amiga. Fantastic. Let's not get too excited.
Get excited. Go on.
I bought the 64 Ultimate. I'll buy that too. Sure. Just keep feeding me more stuff. Sure. And the 1200 would be the ideal, I think, to model that after, both in form and function. Although being FPGA, it could probably be any Amiga you wanted to, right?
Jason, are you going to buy one? Is it on your shopping list?
Wake me if it happens. And I right now, I'll tell you, if such a thing comes out, it won't be the last one, because then they'll be, there's that AAA chipset, and they would still drag that BS out for another 5 years minimum. So, and a special edition clear one. Don't forget the clear case. Oh, well, sure. That's what you do when people start getting salty that they don't have the AAA one. Now, does anybody have the molds for the Amiga 1200 like they found for the 64?
The
authentic
A1200 has a replica case, which is, as far as I know, indistinguishable, assuming that there's no quality issues with it. That'll do. So there is maybe a chance for a third era of Checkmate, as Chris hinted. Maybe Stephen will pass or sell the project on to someone else to take over. But unless that happens, the only way to get one now will be second hand. We are sponsored this week, thank you very much, by Pixel Addict magazine, Britain's best-selling tech history magazine. And they've got a new issue. It's issue number 34. And on the front, apart from Brenda and John Romero and Wings, there is a compact luggable. These comical-looking devices, I think, to younger people now, but these were absolutely the forefront of technology. The luggable IBM compatibles that cost an absolute fortune. There's more in there as well. There's talk about the Commodore Max, something I know absolutely nothing about. One of Commodore's, no doubt, harebrained schemes to keep things going. What was a Commodore Max, Jason? Oh, that was a super, super, super early use of the hardware that became the Commodore 64. So it's got a big chip. It's got a SID chip. It doesn't have a whole lot else in it, including almost no memory. So it was sold only in the Japanese market. It's got a membrane keyboard. It's real weird. But yeah, it's less than being something to keep things going. It was more like, we've got these chips. What do you want to do with them? So where would you read about that then, Jason? I guess you would read about that in Pixel Addict magazine, which you can get yourself signed up for at addict.media. Thank you for sponsoring us. And if you would like to sponsor an upcoming episode of This Week in Retro, please write to us, twir@thisweekinretro.com. Dr. Local told us about a new release to the BBC Archive YouTube channel. It's a 1978 long-form commercial. I mean, they call it a trade information film, but I mean, come on, it's a commercial. For CFAX, which was the BBC's brand for Teletext service. And Teletext services, well, all right, I mean, Teletext is one of those portmanteaus that tells you what it is. It's text delivered to your television. And the video shows a variety of workaday people in a variety of trades, and they're all relying on these one-way transmitted text pages, which appear against a mostly black screen. With a remote control. Some of them were wired, as seen in this video, which is always quaint. There's a special hardware that decodes the teletext symbol, and it tells it to decode a specific page that's just being streamed continuously, in the background of the video image. And teletext services and these page selections were used to break up information according to, like, say, a broad topic area. Then you'd drill down into a specific article or an area of interest. For example, they might say, weather is on page 200 and business news might be on page 300. And then page 300, has headlines that say, the full story for this is on page 310, 320, 330, so forth. What's particularly cool about teletext and what gives it lasting appeal for us here on This Week in Retro is that it's one of these products that was squeezed out of an existing legacy technology. And that legacy technology was in no way designed with support for this in mind. It's been a while since, for example, the earliest cellular networks have been shut down around the world. And, today the SMS protocol has either been completely replaced by things like RCS and iMessage, or you basically are in a situation where modern phones and cell towers are mimicking old behavior so that SMS messages can still be sent and received. But SMS wasn't something that was supposed to be possible or was intended to work on cellular networks.
It's just that people figured out, all right, there's some disused bandwidth, and it would be possible to put these short text messages, destined to one phone or later multiple phones, you could just put those messages in the disused bandwidth, and boom, you had a new and briefly lucrative new mode of communication created. Do you guys have a favorite tech like this? Something that gets jammed into another tech like SMS and teletext that the original devisers never imagined?
The one I did think of, because I was looking at it yesterday, and that is power over Ethernet, which is a neat little thing that allowed them to shove electricity through, well, there's electricity already in there, but electricity to power small devices through an Ethernet cable. It was never designed for it, but they noticed that they could put it in the unused wires, and then afterwards they noticed they could put it in the used wires. So it sounds dangerous, but it's not, because it's done through a handshake to make it safe. And it means that for a security camera, you just need one cable. Or in case of my Zigbee routers that I'm looking at, you can just use one cable to put these routers there to catch all the home stuff. So it's quite clever, that. I don't know if it's my favorite. It's not as exciting as Teletext.
I didn't think I had one until Dave said that. And so I'm going to counter with the reverse of that, which is Ethernet over power, whereby you send a network, which I did. The first time somebody said that to him, which in fact is the guy that I bought this house off, he said, I use these things. And I'm thinking, there's no way that's going to work. Right. And then we got some, because we've got a bit of a dead spot in one of the bedrooms upstairs, and it worked. It was good enough. It wasn't great. It's certainly not a fantastic solution, but it worked. I was gobsmacked.
So this is actually putting Ethernet through plugs in your wall. Amazing.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's about 1 megabit, I think, of bandwidth is the best they can do. Wow.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
If there's no other way, sure.
Yeah.
That reminds me of, I don't know if this made it outside the US. If it did, I'm sorry, but the X10 protocol, home automation protocol, which was very, very, very low bandwidth. I want to say something like 10 bits per second over your power lines. And they made switches. They made outlets that were automatable. They had cameras, although it wasn't, the camera was wireless. You were controlling it. There's a tie-in to internet history there, because they were one of the first banner ad spammers that drove people insane. The X10, with the floating thing that you can't click and can't make it go away. That this probably goes back to the 90s. It's to me that's all the hacker spirit. It's let's cram a technology into somewhere where no one ever thought it was supposed to be there. I mean, what was DSL after all? Pushing data over copper lines that really couldn't handle it. When your distance from the central office affected what bandwidth you got, it was not really a robust technology.
It is not terribly often that you're going to hear an American, particularly one from, let's say, one of the top 40 metropolitan areas in the country, as Jason still is and I once was. You will often hear us praise a feature of television from another country, at least not before the rise of digital transmission and direct broadcast satellite anyway. Because say what you will about quality, but we Americans who were within reach of the big stations, which by population, I mean, that's the substantial majority of us, we had access to so much more choice than basically anywhere else in the world. So for context, I'm going to run down from 1982 in the Chicago market, we Jasons grew up. On broadcast television, we had the 3 commercial nationwide networks at the time, CBS, NBC, and ABC, from a Chicago peeps out there, of course, 2, 5, and 7. A public broadcasting system station. Admittedly, their adult-oriented programming was largely borrowed from the BBC and ITV affiliates, but, fine. That's on your channel 11. 2 independent stations. So these are stations that are mostly showing news syndicated programming. They have some news coverage, some other local programming, a lot of reruns, a lot of sports. 9 and 32. Spanish language station on 26. Station focused on religious programming on 38. And this gets into a whole other area, 2 stations, they were independent broadcasters like 9 and 32, but for some reason around this time, they're allowed to broadcast over the public airwaves, but require a monthly subscription and a dedicated decoder box in order to watch them. These are on TV and Spectrum on 44 and 66, like pay TV over publicly licensed broadcast airwaves. That is a whole weird other area of retro I'd love to get into some other time. But in 1982, we've got all of these stations. Most of them are either truly broadcasting 24 hours a day, or they only sign off for a handful of hours in the middle of the night, say between 1 and 6. Was it all good? I mean, no, of course not. But it offered the illusion of choice, and compared to what was pretty typical around the world, you have 2 or 3 heavily regulated broadcasters. It's a pretty generous setup. All of that said, America at this time, or really any time, had virtually no adoption of teletext. And it wasn't because of NTSC technology limitations or anything like that. There's plenty of vertical blank bandwidth available on either NTSC or PAL formats. In simple terms, vertical blank is the time that a television spends not actually drawing a picture. Basically, it's getting the electron gun from the bottom back to the top. And you can pack quite a bit of data into just a single line if you know what you're doing. So that wasn't an issue. Dave.
Hello to Into the Vertical Blank podcast, since you mentioned them.
Indeed. Yeah, the problem wasn't a lack of vertical blank bandwidth. It was just that for whatever reason, it really never caught on that one-way teletext became really quite prevalent as an option on British sets by the middle of the 1980s. And teletext is not alone in doing interesting things in that V-blank region. That's when a lot of the actual computing happens in a lot of 8-bit software, notably on platforms like the Atari 2600, shout out to Chris's setup there. That's when basically all of the game calculations are happening, because while the screen is being drawn, the CPU has to be basically dedicated to just painting that thing line by line. It has no time to think. The best that most of us in the US could hope for, if you wanted the teletext type experience, or at least the closest we were going to get, were things like WFLD Chicago's Night Owl service. Night Owl was provided by a company called Keyfax, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And it broadcast a single hour of linear, non-interactive text and basic graphics on a loop for several hours. Night Owl ran for about a year in the overnight time slot of good old Channel 32. I mean, was this as good as teletext? No, clearly, because you were just getting screen by screen as the engineer running it wanted you to. But it was pretty cool. Like, as a young kid, I was pretty excited just to see all that text and graphics and up-to-date information on the screen. My fellow Jason, like, how many times did you either stay up late or get up early to take in some Night Owl?
I don't know how you saw this, because I was 10, maybe at most 10, so you were a little bit younger.
I was a little bitty. Yeah.
I do certainly remember it, and when the channel that is now called the Museum of Chicago Television, we knew it as Fuzzy Memories before YouTube existed, when he had his own site, posted that video that, oh my God, that unlocked so many memories. And I'm like, I remember that. And it was, yes, on WFLD 32. And it was a slideshow, basically, like you would see on a cable access station, just things scrolling by. And you could even tell it had the capability of being interactive, but we never got that here. Asterisk, there were test markets here in various cities, but all I ever saw in production was exactly that. Keyfax, if I remember, was a cooperative of Field Communications that owned WFLD, and I think Honeywell did the hardware for it. But there was an experiment with Minitel, the French company here. I own. Unfortunately, I don't have it here. I have an American market Minitel terminal. Canada had interactive teletext, right? I remember at one of your shows, the early ones, finding the Commodore 64 teletext cartridge. And I think a Canadian bought it and brought it home. But someone out there has hacked or reverse engineered the back end and can actually set up a teletext server now, so you can use any of those devices. There were experimental markets here. I think our library had something. I may be imagining that. I know they had a dial-up BBS system in Schaumburg, Illinois. But I cannot think of any production use of that in the U.S. Canadians and Europeans. So I agree, Jason. Yeah, the Europeans had it. Now, in high school, I was 15 years old. It was 1989. I went to Germany as one of those exchange kids. And I was staying with a host family in Munich. And they had neat gadgets, and they left me alone in their house. And I played with a TV, of course, and I found the teletext built in. It was built into all the televisions then. And it probably was that way in the UK with CFAX, I'm going to guess. And I'm like, my God, this is almost a computer. I'm interacting with it. And you could just pick menus and pick news pages, like you said, rather than watching them scroll by. And I was a fan of the band Echo and the Bunnymen. Still am, but I was back then, even as a 15-year-old. And their drummer had just died in a motorcycle accident. And it was revealed to me through German teletext. And that's why that stayed in my brain all of these years. And and I was surprised doing a little reading last night that it started in the early 70s. And I don't know on what hardware, if it was in people's TVs back then, or you needed a dedicated terminal or what.
Most TVs had it by the 80s, certainly. And the upgrade to it, I think, was called fast text. And what that meant was your TV would actually cache the signal so that you could go to pages that had already stored, whereas normal teletext, you'd go to the page and you then would wait until it finally broadcast that page to you. And I'll come in and say this now. I noticed when I watched the video that Jason's talking about, up the top it said page 220. And I thought, does that mean there was more if you had an enable thing? And no, that didn't make sense, because it couldn't, because you were watching this on a TV that didn't have teletext. So it was only one page and it was just being refreshed with the information.
That's why I say it certainly looked like it should have been interactive, but they just never turned that part on.
Yeah, I was hoping there's a secret there that no one knows about, but no, there's no secrets there.
I have a prop. I have an item from the basement. I couldn't find the Minitel, but I have here we go, the Quazon QuickLink 300, and this was an American teletext terminal. It's really a very, very simple terminal with a modem built into it. And you can access news and information, electronic shopping, financial databases, so forth. I turned this thing on once. I hooked it to my 65-inch TV, and the letters were, this big. And there was someone's phone book in there. But here it is. And Atari fans rejoice. You may not have the worst keyboard in the world with the Atari 400. This is a horrible membrane keyboard. But speaking of dodgy engineering from back in the day, I'm going to try to show this sticker right there. This was a production sticker on a production device.
This area is normally warm.
Normally warm.
That's what you call the safety engineer say, well, it'll
when it has to ship, it has to ship. It doesn't matter how warm it gets. And people didn't understand. Computers were, power-hungry devices back then.
And yes, shout out to the Museum of Classic Chicago Television. If you are on video, you've been seeing some of those night owl images. Dave, thank you for doing your homework. Chris, did you happen to take a look at this video?
I actually didn't see the message to look at it. Sorry. I was waiting for the page to load.
When that JPC Rights guy says things, sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. Anyway, to get back to a country where teletext really was a thing, sometimes the most interesting stuff in this BBC video is the depiction of how the BBC CFAX department generated and updated the pages. You're seeing them in the workplace using some late 70s looking terminals backed up by a lot of, newswire printouts, programming tie-in material for what's being broadcast. And at least as far as this documentary video shows, the pages seem to be getting updated manually. So yeah, there are stock and commodity price updates, but it feels from the context that all of that information is entered by an operator. It's not being automatically synchronized from the trading exchange as it would be today. These types of industrial and promotional videos, they always struggle to make moments of, convince us that these are normal people having a normal day seem real. But it was interesting to see that they were kind of struggling to make the case for, well, now I can get news without waiting for the next newspaper. And we know that that's exciting because we learned from the public web. That's super exciting. It becomes one of the many existential threats to newspapers. But as interesting as teletext was, I don't get the sense in any research that it ever became something as nearly, all-encompassing as on-demand information would become via the public internet in the mid-1990s. And that's why after the mid-1990s, it's not too long that you start to hear of major, nationwide teletext services shutting down. Teletext, SMS, these other discovered innovations, by the way, are one of the reasons that I don't worry too much about all the consternation over current price and supply crunch for things like RAM and storage and so forth. Because we're talking about systems that grew out of curiosity, but also market imperative for what can we do that's new with tech and infrastructure that we've already got. It's not budging. And they successfully, went mad, created some really cool stuff with it. So I am very hopeful that people will be able to innovate on, say, 2 gig of memory devices once again.
A very weird, I could talk about teletext for far too long and I won't, but teletext art. Some of the stuff on there was really good. A very weird phenomenon, though, that we've long outgrown is teletext holidays. I'll pause there while you puzzle what on earth could that mean. Before the mass adoption of the internet, teletext represented one of the few ways to get live information out to people that was cheap and easy to get to people and easy to update. So for a period of time, it was how Brits booked our holidays on short notice. If you had 2 weeks off work, you wanted to go on holiday to Spain, you would get on teletext and sit and patiently wait as the screens updated until you saw one you liked and phone the number to book it. And there's even a little bit of a legacy of it. There's a website, teletextholidays.co.uk. That's just what the company's called. Nothing to do with teletext anymore, but they're still going. There's still a last-minute holiday type thing. So that's the key highlight for teletext, I'll point out, because it's just not time to go into a full discussion. We'll get lots of comments on it, I'm sure. It's absolutely fascinating technology. It's amazing. But if you're going to give credit to anyone, don't look at what Minitel did in France, because that blows teletext out the water.
Okay. Yeah, I thought for sure it was going to be like, well, either we sit and we watch The Queen, or we watch teletext. So I was wrong about
that was the two
teletext.
activities, yeah. Her Majesty's on the television, everyone stand up, and then we'll book a holiday.
Chris, any significant teletext tie-in for you before we move on?
Only that every time we talk about teletext, my mind's taken back to a certain summer holiday and my group of friends. And because there was like a bulletin board system, not so much a bulletin, but message board system. And as a teenager, there was these sort of pages designed for teens. And you could add your own messages. How did you do that, given it's a one-way system? Well, you used your parents' phone if they were out of the house, and you rang up and you left a message with your voice. And then I assume somebody, because this was before, voice to text, somebody would have had to type it out if they deemed it funny enough or interesting enough to put on the message board. And I got one put on there. And it wasn't just that I saw my message up on the screen. So it was like I'd magically interacted. I mean, it was only about 10 or 15 minutes for it to appear. But then people started to react to it. So we're talking, pre-Facebook kind of social media kind of interaction. And the best bit about that was I was then talking to one of the girls in my friendship group a couple of days later. I told her about the message I posted, and she went, "That was you?" Because she happened to be looking at her teletext at the same time as my message got posted. So that was a really cool thing. It just felt like you'd interacted in this system that otherwise felt one way. Dave? 2
more things on teletext. I can't keep them in. The first is football scores. It was a fantastic way to get the football scores, to find out who was scoring. You could sit on teletext and get a live update as the league's goals went in. And the second thing is subtitles. You could go to page, I think, 888 in teletext. Yeah. It would only show the subtitles. The rest of it would show the TV thing behind you. And you could get subtitles in the UK for things where otherwise you wouldn't be able to get them. I'll stop talking about it now, sorry.
No, but the sports score thing is perfect because, teletext was a hugely important jumping off point to, not only attune early adopter consumers into the idea of getting information on demand. Why wait till tomorrow's paper to get the scores? You can get it right now. But also creating the infrastructure behind the scenes to supply that content. The newsroom scenes in this strike me because they don't look especially well staffed and they don't seem especially idle. Like there's a few people and they're pretty busy. And the guy at the end who's knocking down several slugs of hard liquor while seemingly his entire desk is smoking is just an amazing time capsule in itself. So if you miss hard drinking, smoking men who get a bit of teletext before bed, this is a video for you. At some point on the show, I hope we'll get a chance to talk about real world, old school NTSC versus PAL. PAL had the higher resolution, but NTSC had the better frame rate. And yes, when I visited the UK, I did notice a subtle difference in strobing at 50 hertz versus 60, but that is for another time. For now, this has been Gen X Jasons, who grew up in Chicagoland, a special one-time department on This Week in Retro. We would like to offer lavish thanks to Plato and Matt for upgrading to annual Patreon supporters. Apologies that we missed this last week, but we greatly appreciate your ongoing confidence in the show.
And I'd like to welcome on a new patron, SM Olivia. So thank you very much for joining up as a patron, supporting us. If you'd like to join the Twirlers, if you'd like to become an official Twirler, where would you go, Chris?
Patreon.com/This Week in Retro.
Yeah, without the /Aaron. That's right.
Yes.
Well done.
I had to think. You saw my mind turning, didn't you? The cogs.
Little wheels going click.
Yeah,
click,
little.
click,
They
click,
sometimes
click.
they show through the hairline. Yeah.
Thank you for joining up as a patron.
And thanks for the feedback on our Bunker Systems Patreon special episode from May. We've got a new episode of 260 Weeks Ago in Retro coming soon, and it will be about an important milestone in This Week in Retro history. And we got a nice 32-bit review from Falcor 386. Thank you very much for supporting our Duncan's 50th birthday Jubilee Drive. A great way to start your weekend, wrote Falcor 386. And Gorgar will eat you with 3 exclamation points, which I'm sure is very important. He chimed in as well, saying it is a weekly essential. Thank you both for that. If you do submit a review to your podcast app or an aggregator, please let us know where it is. We can add it to the list, and thank you.
On to news and briefs, and in retro racing news, the Xbox 360 version of Daytona USA has been recompiled for the PC. So this game did come out for the PC originally, but the Xbox 360 version was much better, built from the original arcade's code base. So a little bit of digging says the PC port was underwhelming, and this version is seen to be near arcade perfect and ironically much easier to run on a modern PC than the original PC version. So thanks to OKYam894 for linking the video and to Weekly Interest for the explanation.
And the funny thing is, I'm interested about that story because I didn't realize there was an Xbox 360 port of Daytona USA. So now that's going to go in my list of games I must collect. Love Daytona. Dr. Local has linked us to a BBC archive video from 1998 of buying our first family computer. I think we were all pretty much down that road by 1998. Certainly wasn't my first by that late in the piece. You guys?
10 years after that. In fact, more than 10 years after that.
Yeah.
Okay, Yam894 linked us to a time extension article on a lost mobile version of Metal Slug being found. It is the Vodafone Live version, and it's a neat little demake.
Magical Mike tells us there was at one point a possibility of a Red Dwarf point-and-click adventure game, and the image from the pitch for it looks very much like a LucasArts pixel art game. Maybe now that Red Dwarf is finished, maybe now there's a market for it. Maybe it'll come back. Don't know.
Another article on time extension. This one is from Antiques for Geeks, and it's from the Evercade boss who says the games industry is failing older gamers. He's talking about lapsed gamers and that things are not accessible enough for them to get back on the horse.
And a developer has created an impressive, if narrowly capable, spell checker for the Commodore 64, all on a single 170K floppy side. It stores over 123 words in its dictionary, and using some fuzzy logic spits out a yes or no answer within just a few seconds of your input. Full code and usable images are on GitHub.
And the Stop Killing Games campaign is getting mainstream attention. Squelch411 links us to a BBC article on it, which is a good summary of things so far, and something that will hopefully improve things rather than just be an attack. There are lots more things to read in our subreddit. If you go to reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro, you can see the articles that people have submitted. You can submit your own, importantly, and you can click the little up and down arrows to give your priorities and what you'd like us to discuss next week.
Well, it would seem Gotham City has a new villain in the form of a guy called Dudley, who, having fallen into a vat of alphabet soup, emerging as a supervillain and YouTuber, Yestazine has dared to challenge the unquestionably awesome Amiga 500 Batman pack. Well, Dudley, if that is indeed your real name, tell all your friends about me, because I'm a Batman pack fan. Actually, let's set the record straight away. Dudley has indeed put out a video called "Does the Batman Pack Hold Up?" as posted in the Reddit by Colony Activist. And yes, he slapped the word overrated across the thumbnail with a question mark after it. And he has kind of been, I'm sure it was a tongue-in-cheek comment, but he has kind of been accused of clickbait. But it's not. He's asked a question and he's answered it. And even if it were clickbait, it wouldn't be a terrible example of it. And I'm sorry, but I blame human behavior, not creators, or even the algorithm, because for some bizarre reasons unknown, people love to click on things they think are wrong. Moving on then to the actual video itself, what Dudley has in fact produced is a really well thought out and humorously scripted video covering the Batman pack and whether or not it equated to a success for the Amiga at that time. He unpacks each game in detail, overlaid with his own actual gameplay and his admissions of his shortcomings as a player, and comparisons of those games to the ST versions and also 8-bit ports of the games where relevant. The games, in case you're not aware of what came with the Batman pack, or maybe you're an ST user, were, of course, Batman the Movie, New Zealand Story, and FA-18 Interceptor. As is the flavour for his channel, this is all wrapped up in period-correct snippets from magazines of the time, giving excellent context to this Amiga bundle, the gaming landscape of the period, and other bundles that emerged. Before I move on, guys, what's the very first computer or console bundle you recall being tempted by, even if you didn't buy it? What's the first one you remember thinking, oh yeah, I want that because of what comes with it?
Yeah, I got to say the first one that I ever saw, like, this is a game that's packaged with a thing, and that is super impressive. I mean, that's got to be Super Mario Brothers in the original Nintendo, because, many of us first played Super Mario as a stand-up, arcade game. And it was a lot of fun, and it looked really great. And it was immediately clear that you were getting 99.99% the exact same game at home. So that was like, whoa. Okay, we're not just talking about, it's a port or whatever. This, it is this game. That was very, very impressive.
The first one was attractive. I don't think I was. I don't think the packs really attracted me. We got the CPC, and it came with a few games that my parents had bought with it. And then the other packs I saw, like the Spectrum and so on, I didn't want the Spectrum until, of course, the pack I'll talk about later on came across. And that was amazing.
Other Jason, anything?
I don't know Jason. If it was...
Yeah, other Jason.
Yes, I'm perfectly fine being the other one. Yes. I don't know if it was bundled or not. It may have been. Someone will correct me. But as an Atari 2600 family, we got that on clearance at the store when they were $30 or whatever, and games were $3, $5, whatever. I'm still hurt to this day by how horrible the Pac-Man was on Atari 2600. And I know there's some defenders out there, but I remember my father saying, it sounds like someone's plucking a guitar in there, because it made that bomp, 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 bomp sound. And he was square or something, it was bad. And the 5200, which, again, someone will correct me, I think is an Atari 800 inside or yep. Very close, had a great arcade-looking implementation of Pac-Man. So I was instantly envious of that. I never got a 5200. I don't think I have one now even. But that's an example of where a single game could have sold me, I was 11, whatever, a new game platform. My Amiga did not come with Batman, by the way.
Did it not?
I watched. Was that a UK bundle, or was that sold
primarily?
Here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
This is one of those.
I did watch that video last night, and I was thinking, well, I'm not sure what the drama is here, but mine had only FA-18 Interceptor. That was the only game that came with mine, and it was a great game, and I think it was platform exclusive.
Yes.
So it really, obviously that's why they bundled it. It really did show off the Amiga. Summer of 91 is when I would have gotten my 500. So I think later on they were lowering the price and bundling different games with it. But no, mine only came with one, and Workbench 1.3, or maybe even 1.2.
The best. Oh no, by 91 it surely would have been 1.3 because that's what came with.
I remember having to do a
89.
ROM upgrade on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably to support 2, Workbench 2. But.
Yeah, that would have been to support 2. Well, it's no secret. Go on.
I'm sorry. I'll admit I did not know there was a Batman game for the Amiga.
I think it was mainly a UK initiative by David Pleasance, although there are people here in Australia that swear blind that they got it over here as well. But I think there are a lot of retailers doing sort of their own grey importing or creating their own bundles. So
yeah.
So there we go. But it's no secret I've got tons of love for the Batman pack. And in fact, the Reddit post was the real clickbait here, as it included the line, "Have you seen this, Chris?" So I almost didn't want to watch the video. So yes, I'm going to chime in and correct everything Dudley got wrong. Dudley, mate, it's called a bat rope, not a bat line. And it's called the Batarang, not Bat Ninja Stars. I think those are the only things he got wrong. It's an excellent video, in my opinion. Although there is a bit of a myth where he touches on that David Pleasance invented the Pack-In Games bundle. And that confuses me a little, right? I'm not sure where I heard that myth from, in fact. But anyway, it does confuse me a little because when I first heard that, I took that as gospel truth. I thought, okay, yeah, this is the guy. It makes sense. I remember the Batman pack, and somehow completely forgot that before I had a Batman pack in 1997, I myself had received the Chartbusters Spectrum Plus 3 pack. And yes, that included a special sleeve over the normal Plus 3 box with special branding, just like the Batman pack and later pack-ins. And that was 2 years earlier. And that also mostly included Ocean titles as well, quite interestingly, same as the Batman pack. Granted, I think that might have been a Dixon's or Curry exclusive. I think. I'm not 100% sure. So maybe it was more of a retail initiative rather than a manufacturer one. But yeah, I'm not sure where that pack actually came from. But my broader question here is, what do you think were the best bundles from any era? So even into the modern day, and it doesn't have to be games. It could be productivity software. You know, what have you looked at again and gone, oh yeah, I really want that because it comes with, you know, this word processor or this art package or whatever.
Yeah, I kind of already answered what the big this is attention getting. I think I'd be remiss if I don't talk about the fact that an awful lot of time is spent in this video evaluating everything on the basis of what is absolutely the cheapest way you can do a thing, which I got to say is a recurring theme when we talk about computing in the UK. And some of these things are not apples to apples. Like, it's interesting to note that the Amiga version of some of these games was more expensive than the ST, even though the quality wasn't that much different. That is interesting to note. But if you've already made your computer purchase, that's a thing that sucks, but it's not, you know, in that moment, like, what are you going to do? So the drive to, and he talks a little bit about, like, you know, some of those really big packs of where you're giving away so many games for the ST. I'm sure that there was some consternation in the software market about that as well. It does become kind of a eating your own tail problem. But I don't remember bundling being a hugely motivating factor for me. Jason Timmons and I, both got the exact same pack. You're right. The only game was FA-18 Interceptor. You got a pretty basic word processor in the form of kind words. You got up and running. You could do what you needed to do that day. You unpacked it. I do remember decent bundles of games coming with graphics cards and new computers, but not being super worked up about them. Like, I remember Loom on CD-ROM and a few other halfway decent games being included with my girlfriend's 486. My original Xbox, which I got kind of later in that thing's run, came with an NCAA football title, which I did end up playing a whole lot, even though I'm not particularly interested in college football as a concept. So I think, like, the games that your computer, your game console come from will inform what you play on them. But yeah, not a hugely motivating thing. And right, we Americans are pretty immune to Batman pack discourse because it wasn't a thing here.
Was the film a big deal? Because the film is a huge deal.
Yeah, massive.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So it really hit the right note. It was everyone wanted the film, and it came, and it was great.
Oh yeah, and all sorts of licensed tie-ins and merchandise, all of that. But like this very, very specific moment in history where young men of a certain age are all either they either have the Batman pack or they don't have the Batman pack. Like, that is a UK phenomenon.
I think this is as someone called it, a retail bundle, not a manufacturer, but an app that sold, say, a few thousand Atari STs was Cubase. Atari, the ST, especially in mainland Europe, probably the UK too, was the musician's computer. And Atari were brilliant on putting MIDI ports in the thing. Why didn't Commodore do that with the Amiga? But Atari ST and Cubase, at least my local shop where my Amiga came from, which was, I think, probably an Atari shop that happened to sell Amiga, but Cubase and ST were all over the place. And you heard about them for years afterwards. And I'm sure I have CDs downstairs that were recorded on that very combo, or composed on that combo.
I won't go into bundles just yet, Chris. It's important that I don't overstate what I did to help Dudley here. But I did help with this video. A little bit. I gave him a few nudges where to look at, but he's put into loads and loads of research. And this video is actually kind of part two to another video he did a few months back. The first one was provocatively titled the ST1. And he's talking about a very specific point in time where he shows the 16-bit machine to have at that point in time is the Atari ST, not the Amiga. And it's a couple of years earlier than this. It's when Dungeon Master was out, and you could get Dungeon Master on the ST, but not the Amiga. And at that point, there was a big price difference between the ST and the Amiga. And the games for the Amiga at that point were just ST ports, really. But he goes on this video and he shows the point. The Batman pack is really important in the UK, not just important for two reasons. First of all, it was a fantastic pack-in for the Amiga that didn't have pack-ins until then. Commodore refused to put a game pack out for the Amiga, and then David Pleasance famously did this. But the other thing was, this was a brand new game. This wasn't the usual pack-in, which was a 6, 9-year-old, 2 years old, 3 years old game being bundled with it. This was, you wanted Batman to play, and you could buy a computer that had it there and then. And we talked about Super Mario for the Nintendo. Same kind of idea. It was the game you wanted to play with the computer brand new. But Dudley talks about this. This is the point at which the Amiga took over from the ST. At this point in time, Dudley actually shows in the video, the ST was more popular, but this is the point at which the Amiga then beat the ST, and the Amiga then went on to become the dominant 16-bit machine and actually sold way more than the ST ever did. And he shows that when he references Ahoy's video on Amiga sales, and he shows that, at least in the UK, I think worldwide, in fact, the Amiga sold more in the 90s than it did in the 80s. It's a fascinating video. As far as pack-ins for me, though, it was the power pack for my ST, the one that we hinted at before. It was 20 current-ish games, very arcade conversion-focused, the games you would have heard about. They came almost exactly like you would get pirate games. You would get maybe a dozen discs with these 20 games on them, and it would set you up for a life on the high seas, which is what I did with my Atari ST. I think Jason, I can say Jason, if I can't remember which one it was. I can say Jason and pretend I meant the right one. You mentioned that this was, games makers would have been unhappy with this because it did. It set people up. Here's a pile of discs. If you want another pile of discs, go to your local market and give them £1 each for each disc and pirate them. But no bundle can compare to the Batman pack in terms of this is the most recent game and the one you want to play. Although, ironically, New Zealand Story is a much better game, and the Interceptor is an Amiga exclusive game, and it really shows off the Amiga. So the Batman, the one on the front cover, is not maybe the best game that you get. Oh, it's okay. It's a very successful, very cool film, and a really interesting story and a fantastic video from Dudley.
I always defend the game itself as well. I love F-18. It probably was my favourite game in the pack, but I absolutely love Batman as well.
I don't say Batman's not a bad game, and there's lots of variety in it, and the different levels are decent, but I don't think it's got the same kind of staying power as the other two would have.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. And I think the test of a good pack is, does it have something for everyone? You know, it's like you got to try and attract people that like different genres of games, and that's not easy to do, especially when you're only shipping 3 games, right? So yeah, it's good. I actually have an Atari 2600 bundle here from the 80s that actually has packing games. Granted, they were taped to the outside of the box on this particular one. So it's a Vader, and it's all in the original box and everything. And the pack-in was Space Invaders, and it's got it looks like a sticker on the box here, but it's actually not. So that's part of the box design, right? So that clearly always came with Space Invaders. And then they've decided to add 2 more cartridges, which were Asteroids and Air-Sea Battle. And while it looks like there's branding down the side of the box, that is actually tape. And then they put additional tape around to hold the cartridges in the shop. But it shows how early they were doing pack-in bundles, right? That's the Atari 2600, very early 80s with the Vader there, the black version. That's probably the earliest example I've got in my own personal collection. What I'm interested in is if they bother with bundles anymore in the modern day. And if they do, what do they look like? Because I remember even when I pre-ordered my PlayStation 2 from Dixon's, they did a multimedia bundle, because the big thing about the PlayStation 2 was it was a DVD player. So the bundle I got included 2 controllers, the DVD remote, 3 games, and 2 DVDs. That was a fantastic bundle. And I also remember even buying a graphics card for one of my earlier PCs. That was my P100, which became a P200 MMX. And when I bought I'm pretty sure it was a 3D FX Banshee that came with a copy of Incoming. And I remember thinking, surely this isn't a full game. This has got to be a demo and it's going to cut out at some point. No, it was the full game. It was a pack-in with a graphics card. Xbox, obviously, Halo bundles were all the rage, but my bundle I remember getting came with Halo, but it also came with Jet Set Radio Future and Sega GT. So that was a good bundle as well. PS3, can't remember what came with that. PS4, the local EB games just came up with their own bundles. You could actually just choose three games. And those were the first games I traded in, including FIFA. So if I think about it, I think the most modern example I've got in my collection is this PSVR bundle. So it's the Mega Pack. Cost us a lot more over here than they came out in America, because I was comparing prices at the time. So yes, you still need a PS4, but it's the PSVR headset, and that came with 5 games, which were VR Worlds, Doom VFR, Skyrim VR, Astrobots, and Wipeout VR. So a really nice collection. Only it doesn't come with them at all, because there wasn't a single disc in the box, just download codes. And once you've redeemed those, they're worthless. So there's absolutely no resale value. There's no collection value. It's just a box with some codes in it. So I'm not convinced they bother anymore with packs. I think that's a shame. I think this town needs an enema. If the PS5 had come with a box copy of RoboCop Road City as a pack-in and a nice, branded box on the outside to go with that, I think I'd have bought one by now, but I don't have one. To be fair, they did do a Spider-Man bundle, and they've also done a Fortnite one, but I'm not sure bundling a free game counts. And I'm even going to say, right, I wish it was the same even for things like the MacBook Air or the Mac Mini or even PCs. The Mac has actually got a fantastic port of RoboCop for the silicon chips. It runs great. So why not pack that in? Just imagine, right? Oh, so go on, Jason.
I just want the record to show I asked Chris to do a Sean Connery earlier. He declined. And then he set himself up to do a Jack Nicholson, and he didn't do that either.
No, I didn't.
What a
I thought about it,
read of,
but it's not going to come out right. It's not
Try it. Go on.
I'm not going to try it. No. Go back to previous episodes, way back, and you listen to my Emperor Palpatine impression. That's probably the only thing I've done on this show worth going back to. But no, just imagine, right? Because if you imagine buying a new PC, especially as a teenager, maybe you've saved up all your pocket money. Imagine if it came with like Photoshop Lite in place of Deluxe Paint, and it came with 3 AAA titles, physical copies, not codes, and one of those was a movie tie-in, and you give it a big fancy box with outer sleeve with wonderful artwork to commemorate the pack. I think that would be fantastic. I think we'd return to a time when computers were the thing of dreams, and come Christmas, our jealous friends would be asking, where does he get those wonderful toys? It's time now for the community question of the week. And last week's question was, only septuagenarians and up need apply. Colin Porch is releasing a new title at the age of 81. What game dev aged 70 or older do you want to see more games from? So I believe we're at a contest mode. Jason T, do you want to read out the top answer?
All right, the top answer is from Richard Shears. He says, Jeff Crammond. I know it's an obvious choice from me, Richard says, but he is 72 and I believe a perfect candidate. And with the wonderful stunt car racer and imaginative and original The Sentinel, along with legendary Revs and Grand Prix series to his credit, he is an absolute legend.
Who have we got up next, Dave?
We have Jeff Mendoza with Shigeru Miyamoto. And I don't want one more game from him, though. I want lots more, particularly new Zelda, Mario, and Pikmin games.
Nice. Jason C?
Okay. It's Me Thyroid with Steve Wozniak. Others took the credit for Breakout. This time it could be different.
Fair enough. Any other standout ones that you guys have spotted down there?
Ponder65 says, I'm going for RJ Michael, one of the programmers responsible for the awesome but very difficult, Sinistar, who was on a panel at Play Expo Blackpool last year.
Okay.
Oh, Steve Maretsky. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't qualify.
Oh.
Yeah.
You could have got SeaWorld as 7525. Could have got away with that by not mentioning that he's a month out of the thing, but could have got away with that.
Unlike some of our Question of the Week contributors, he's honest.
Yeah.
I'm Amiga says, Danica Caswell of Impossible Mission fame, still a game in my top 5 of all time. Nice. Lots of fantastic answers. What's this week's question of the week, Jason?
Yeah, this week's question is, as of this week, which This Week in Retro host has hosted more episodes than any other?
Oh.
Who could it be?
Do we have an answer for that?
Is it me?
It is you. As
There you
unaudited
go.
by no CPA firm in particular, but as of this episode, according to my count, Dave is now the all-time top of the leaderboard in This Week in Retro episodes. Congratulations, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Dave.
I didn't know. I'm the daddy. Apparently, I've
You're the
taken
daddy.
over from. What would it be, Neil?
Christopher Thomas.
I've beaten. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Neil, that's you. In
Now,
second
real
place.
question, because nobody said otherwise, is going to be design your ideal astounding value retro computer pack-in bundle. It's got one game, one art program, call it a creativity program, and one productivity program for whatever platform you like. What's in it?
Do we need to stipulate that it's got to be period correct? You couldn't pick a game from 5 years after the platform. It has to be something available at that time. Do we have any rules at that, or
Well,
just let people do what they want?
you're the daddy, so I guess,
I'm the daddy. Do what you like, folks. Upvotes and
Nice.
downvotes if people like what you think, and if they think you're cheating too much, they'll downvote you.
And Jeff Mendoza is going to win anyway,
question.
so what does it matter?
That's a very good question, though. I like it.
Jeff gives good answers. Richard Sheard might win. Richard gives amazing answers. Hello, Richard. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us this week on what has been a much longer than intended episode. I do need to rush, so we need to finish up. Thank you for joining us, Jason T, or Jason 1, as you'll now be called. Thank you for joining us, Jason 2, and Chris.
We're all waving. Well, I'm waving.
Chris
anyway.
waves.
Yeah.
You can wave if you want to. You don't have to wave. It's not compulsory.
Oh, thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But our audience loves it. And I can't give our audience a hug, so the least I can do is give them a wave.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 AGIMA, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.